The cafe door jingled softly as she stepped inside, her heart hammering against her ribs like a warning bell. The morning sun filtered through the tall windows, casting a warm glow over the polished wooden tables and the faint swirl of steam rising from freshly brewed coffee. She gripped the small leather envelope tightly in her hands, feeling its edges dig into her palms, grounding her nerves. Today was the day she would face him, the man her father had wronged, and pay the price of a mistake that wasn't hers. Her eyes scanned the room, searching for the familiar figure she had been told to expect. He was there, seated at a corner table near the window, a cup of coffee untouched beside a stack of neatly arranged documents. His posture was relaxed, one leg casually crossed over the other, but there was an unmistakable air of authority about him. He looked up as if sensing her presence, his sharp gaze softening ever so slightly when he saw her hesitance. She took a deep breath, summoning every ounce of courage she had. Each step toward him felt heavy, like walking through water, but her resolve was unshakable. This was not just about money, it was about honor, about righting a wrong that had haunted her family for years. When she finally reached the table, her hands trembling slightly, she placed the envelope carefully before him. I came to pay my father's debt, she said, her voice barely audible, yet trembling with determination. Her eyes never left his face, searching for a reaction, bracing herself for anger or disdain. The CEO's expression remained calm, unreadable, as he leaned back in his chair and steepled his fingers. Then, slowly, he shook his head. "You owe me nothing," he said, his voice steady, almost gentle. The words struck her like a blow, confusing and unexpected. She blinked, caught between relief and disbelief. I don't understand," she whispered, her lips parting in surprise. "Your father's debt." He raised a hand to stop her, his smile subtle but knowing. "Consider it settled," he said. "There's only one thing you owe me." Her heart skipped a beat, and she stared at him, unsure whether to feel fear or curiosity. "And what is that?" she asked, her voice a mixture of caution and wonder. "A dinner," he replied simply, as though it were the most natural thing in the world. "Just dinner. That's all." For a long moment, she sat frozen, the envelope still before him, the weight of expectation slowly lifting from her shoulders. She had prepared for confrontation, for rejection, for anger, but never for this. She hesitated for a moment, the warmth of relief clashing with the lingering tension in her chest. Dinner. That was all he wanted. Her mind raced. Questions, doubts, and unease swirling like a storm. Could it really be so simple? Could someone she had imagined as stern, unforgiving, and distant truly be this kind? The CEO gestured toward the empty chair across from him. "Come, sit, let's talk," he said, his tone calm and inviting. "Not as debtor and creditor. Just people." She swallowed hard, uncertainty flickering across her face, but the sincerity in his eyes was disarming. Slowly, she took the seat, her hands still fidgeting with the envelope now resting on the table beside her. She felt the weight of the past, the harsh judgments, the looming debt, the shame of her father's mistakes, pressing down on her shoulders. Yet, for the first time, it seemed manageable, almost insignificant. "Thank you," she murmured quietly, unsure if she was thanking him or herself for finally showing up. The CEO nodded, his gaze softening as he leaned back. "You don't need to thank me. Life is complicated enough without passing the burdens of others onto the next generation. Your father's mistakes aren't yours to carry." Her chest tightened, and she looked down, embarrassed by the sting of tears she refused to let fall. I felt I had to," she admitted. "It wasn't fair, but I couldn't just let it go. I wanted to make it right." He offered a small, understanding smile. "And you have, just by being here. That takes more courage than you realize. Now," he added with a hint of mischief in his voice, "let's forget about debts and obligations. Tell me about yourself. Who is the girl behind this envelope?" She blinked, startled by the sudden shift from seriousness to casual conversation. But there was something genuine in his curiosity, a warmth that invited honesty rather than scrutiny. Slowly, she began to speak, first hesitantly, then with growing ease. She told him about her life, her dreams, the quiet struggles she had faced, and the moments of triumph she had clawed out for herself. The CEO listened attentively, occasionally nodding or asking a soft, probing question, his demeanor gentle but engaged. Laughter began to punctuate the conversation, small and tentative at first, then freer as the ice between them melted. The envelope, once a symbol of obligation and fear, now seemed irrelevant, a relic of a past that no longer held power over them. She realized that in this simple act of sharing a meal, something had shifted. There was no debt here, only connection, and for the first time in years, she felt lighter. The conversation flowed effortlessly now, but beneath the ease was a subtle undercurrent of curiosity, hers about him, and his about her. She noticed small things. The way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the quiet confidence in his gestures, the careful attentiveness that made her feel truly seen. Each laugh they shared seemed to chip away at the walls she had built around herself, walls forged from years of fear, responsibility, and self-doubt. At one point, she hesitated, stirring her drink absent-mindedly, before asking the question that had haunted her since she first stepped into the cafe. Why are you doing this? My father's debt, it's a lot. Most people would have demanded payment, he interrupted softly, leaning back with that familiar calm, almost teasing expression. But I don't operate like most people. Life is too short for grudges, and I've found that kindness often leads to more than any debt ever could. She stared at him, surprised by his candor, by the absence of judgment in his voice. For a moment, she felt the weight of her worries lift entirely. She had spent years assuming that everything was transactional, that every kindness came with strings attached. But here was someone proving her wrong. Not with grand gestures, but with a simple, steady principle, generosity without expectation. A silence fell, comfortable rather than awkward. She looked out the window, watching the golden light of the late afternoon filter through the trees lining the street. The moment was quiet, but it thrummed with a sense of possibility. Finally, she spoke again, her voice soft but firm. I've never met anyone like you. It's strange, but also relieving. He chuckled lightly. Strange can be good, he said. Relieving is even better. And you've proven yourself braver than you think. Showing up here, facing the past, and yet still willing to open yourself to the present, that's rare. Her heart fluttered, caught between admiration and something she hadn't expected, a gentle, budding trust. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to imagine a future where her father's mistakes didn't define her, where she could step into life without carrying the weight of shame. The conversation drifted from personal histories to shared dreams, ambitions, and small, humorous stories from their respective lives. Each story revealed another layer of the person sitting across from her. A man who was not just a CEO, not just a figure of authority, but someone capable of understanding, patience, and warmth. By the time dessert arrived, it was clear that this dinner had transcended its original purpose. The debt that had brought her here had been replaced by connection, laughter, and understanding. And in that quiet, golden-lit cafe, she realized that this night was not about repayment, it was about the beginning of something entirely new, fragile yet full of promise. The cafe lights had dimmed to a soft, amber glow, and the last of the other patrons had left, leaving only the quiet hum of the evening. She sat back in her chair, the weight of the past now feeling like a distant shadow. The envelope, once a symbol of obligation and fear, had been pushed aside, forgotten. For the first time in years, she felt free, not from her father's debt alone, but from the burden of carrying it in silence. He watched her with a calm intensity, one hand resting on the table, the other loosely around his cup. There was a warmth in his gaze that she hadn't expected, a sincerity that seemed to wrap around her like a comforting blanket. "You've done well tonight," he said quietly. "Not because of what you brought me, but because of what you brought yourself here to do. Courage isn't measured in money or favors, it's measured in moments like this." She smiled, a little self-conscious, but it reached her eyes this time. "I never imagined it would feel like this," she admitted. "I thought there would be anger, lectures, maybe even regret. But it feels lighter. Somehow. That's because it doesn't belong to you," he replied softly. "None of it. Sometimes the debts we carry are illusions, created by fear, pride, or circumstance. Tonight, you chose to lay it down. That choice, that act, is what matters." For a long moment, they sat in silence, the kind that isn't awkward but full of unspoken understanding. The city outside was quieting as well, lights flickering in the distance, the soft rustle of leaves audible through the window. She realized that she had come expecting confrontation but found connection instead, expecting judgment but finding kindness. Finally, he stood, offering his hand to help her rise. "Shall we go?" he asked, the faintest hint of a smile tugging at his lips. "The evening doesn't end with a meal, it begins with it." She took his hand, feeling the steady reassurance in his grip, and allowed herself to walk beside him, out into the cool night air. The streets were bathed in soft golden light, and she felt, for the first time in years, a sense of possibility stretching before her. The past, with all its mistakes and debts, had been acknowledged and released, leaving space for something new, friendship, trust, maybe even something more, though neither had to name it yet. As they walked together, talking lightly and laughing at small jokes, she realized that this night had changed her. What had begun as a duty to repay a debt had transformed into an unexpected gift, a chance to connect, to heal, and to hope. And in that moment, under the gentle glow of the city lights, she knew that sometimes, what you owe isn't money or favor, it's simply the courage to accept kindness and the willingness to step into life unburdened. The evening ended with no promises, no obligations, just a quiet understanding that some encounters, simple dinners, shared stories, small gestures, can leave a mark far deeper than any.